Greetings! My name is Lars Magnus and this is the Football Player Ratings channel, where we develop and present rating systems for individual football players. Today I will respond to a comment that was posted on this channel a while ago. The comment poses the question: is there a level of rating that can differentiate between players that are good enough to appear in the Champions League and players that are not good enough? The short answer to this is no. There's a longer way of responding with a no as well, and after I have done that, I will have a look at an attempt to answer the question with a yes. First though, let me explain why the answer should be no. Our rating system is based on a regression model with lots of independent variables corresponding to player ratings. It mostly succeeds in separating the good players from the not so good ones. We can look at the ratings of, say, the Champions League final in 2018 and say that the average rating of players involved were 0.18. However, that does not necessarily mean anything. Let me explain why. It is normal to differentiate between different types of scales: nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio. Nominal simply means that our measurements fall into categories, such as male or female, red, green, or blue. In a nominal scale, categories are not better or worse than each other, simply different. Ordinal means that our measurements can be ordered, but we do not know the margin between them, say the difference between good and very good, or between very good and excellent. Ratio is the ultimate type of scale. An example is when we measure the height of objects. Not only can we order them, but we can also say how different they are. A 5-meter tall giraffe is 2.5 meters taller than a 2.5 meter tall elephant. And not only that, but the giraffe is twice as tall as the elephant. That's a ratio right there. It is this latter type of statement that cannot be made if you have an interval scale. Take temperature as an example, where 50 degrees Celsius is not twice as hot as 25 degrees Celsius. The reason is that interval scales do not have a true zero. The value 0 corresponds to an arbitrarily selected value, such as the freezing point of water. In essence, the ratings that come out of our regression models are on an interval scale. The ratings that the model assigns to each player depends on the data being used. Although the ratings are roughly centered around 0, if we add or subtract some leagues or tournaments from the dataset, the ratings may shift. In fact, when I create graphs of the development of ratings for players over time, I actually adjust them slightly, based on the drift of ratings that happen over time as a result of having an increasing number of active players in the dataset used. So to conclude the long version of the no. Even if there is a rating that is good enough for the Champions League in a given season with a given dataset, this rating is not a fixed point. It moves around depending on the data that is included in the model. With this in mind, let's go back and try to answer positively a variant of the question anyway. However, instead of focusing on the rating numbers, let's just look at this. Which teams are good enough to play in the Champions League, and which players are good enough? The Champions League is a tournament that spans the entire year, starting with qualification rounds in June and ending with the final in late May. Here we use the 2017-2018 season of the Champions League as an example. From June to August, there are qualifying rounds. Then the group stage takes place from September to December. Elimination rounds start in February, reaching the final in May. This plot shows the range of ratings for players involved in each month of play. The maximum rating of any player in the first qualification round is a little bit lower than the minimum rating of any player involved in the semifinals and final. For the 2016-2017 season, the graph looks reasonably similar, except that apparently some better players were involved already from the first qualification round. Here is another graph from 2018-2019, but it was made before the semifinals and therefore ends in April with the quarterfinals. Now let's use the 2017-2018 season to say something about the average rating required to play at different stages in the Champions League. To play in the finals, your rating should be around 0.18. For the group stage, a rating of 0.1 is enough. If you just want to reach the qualification rounds, a rating of minus 0.15 could be good enough. We can look at a similar graph for the Europa League as well. Here, to reach the finals, your rating should be around 0.1. A rating just above 0 should be enough to play in the group stages, whereas the average rating for players in the early qualification rounds is similar to the first qualification round of the Champions League. Of course, there could be plenty of other players not appearing in these tournaments with even higher ratings than this. However, the numbers we have seen at least gives us some indication of what it means to be good enough to play in these European tournaments. Let us have a look at some selected teams and how their players are rated relative to the thresholds just given. The rating of a team is given as the average rating of the 15 best players of the team. So we should compare these team ratings to the average ratings of different stages in the Champions League. Here we have the ratings of teams in the English Premier League. The two top teams, Liverpool and Manchester City, have a high enough rating to contest for the final, whereas the next 4 teams have high enough ratings to go just past the group stage. The rest of the teams in the Premier League are all rated high enough to reach somewhere between the group stages and the final stages of the Europa League, if only they had the chance to do so. Norwich, for example, is just within the top 100 teams in my current database, with an average rating of 0.05. That is fairly close to the average rating of players in the round of 32 of the Europa League in 2017-2018. If we next look at the Polish League, where last season gave a surprise winner, the best teams seem to be slightly weaker than the average teams in the Europa League group stage, with the exception of Legia Warsaw. The Danish league is less competitive than the Polish league, but the best teams there could perhaps manage to get past the group stage of the Europa League. In terms of the Champions League though, they could all be expected to get eliminated before the group stage. Here are the top 10 teams that appeared in the first qualification round of the Champions League this season. Recall that 0.1 was the average rating in the group stages of the Champions League 2 seasons ago. Some of these teams could therefore have a hope of being some of the lower rated teams to qualify for this season's group stage. Finally, here are the players ranked 90 to 100 from our previous top 100 video, which is more than 6 months old, so it's time to get an update soon. Basically, their ratings are all above the average rating for players in the Champions League semi-finals, and all of them could have a reasonable hope of playing in a Champions League final, if only they are able to join the right team. So that was my attempt of answering yes to a question whose real answer is no. I have a list of other viewer requests for which I plan to make videos in the future. However, more ideas are always better. So feel free to leave your thoughts in a comment below. Hope to see you again soon. Goodbye.